From blockbuster movies to trash TV, we have got you covered today on Off Duty. Welcome to the show. I'm Wendy Bounds. Now, yesterday, I taught you how to get the perfect Katniss Everdeen braid for your Hunger Games screening this weekend. But what does it take to become an archery expert like Katniss? Well, we talked to Katuna Lorig. She is the Olympian who trained actor Jennifer Lawrence in how to shoot a bow and arrow. Let's take a listen. And we're here with four-time Olympic archer Katuna Lorig. She trained Jennifer Lawrence for her role as Katniss Everdeen in the movie The Hunger Games. We're so glad you could be with us, Katuna. Had Jennifer Lawrence ever had any training in archery before she came to you?
No, she absolutely have no experience and never hold a bow before, and she was very curious on the first day.
I bet. So when you sized her up physically, did you think this is a woman who's going to make a good archer? What is the body type of someone who's going to be very skilled in this field?
As a coach, we're always looking for maybe a long neck, long arms, kind of tall person, but it doesn't really, for archers, anybody can be archer, but body structure doesn't really gives a big difference. It just was easy for me to align an alignment with the string on her face. Alignment drill was easy to work with her. So when I saw her, she was about my height, 5'7", 5'8", and long arms and a very good personality. I know it would be easy to work with her.
How often were you guys shooting during the day? How many arrows was she shooting in any practice session with you?
We start with 50 arrows a day. First day of practice wasn't no shooting that much, just maybe 20 arrows, because I make sure she stand correctly as a professional archer would stand, as some archery eyes would look at her, would think she actually have experience in archery. I'm an Olympian, so it's kind of a, to me, it's always kind of, I'm looking forward to professional looks and professional stance in a student.
So I wonder if you have to teach her a different way of shooting, because she was supposed to, and in this movie she's in the woods, she's hunting moving targets, be they animals or be they people. Is that a different stance, a different style of shooting than just aiming at a fixed target that's not moving?
Let's put it this way. This is for the movie, and she needed to look for camera good, and I make sure her alignment on the face with the string was always in the same place, not to move the head. The shoulders was aligned correctly.
There's a scene in the book where she has to shoot a very difficult shot. She's shooting an apple out of the mouth of a pig that's dead and that's been getting ready to be eaten. Do you think in real life, is that a shot she could make now, or is that sort of well beyond what you could teach her in 15 lessons?
Very good archers, as she been described in the book. Yes, we can shoot the apple, we can shoot the very small objects, no problem, from probably 80 yards. Or even more, but she would need more practice, of course, and yes, why not? She could be.
I bet you could hit it. Now, you've been shooting for a long time. How old were you when you started to practice the sport, Katuna?
I started when I was 12. I was picked from the middle school, from the 6th grade.
And you're training right now for the Olympic trials. How are you feeling going forward right now?
Very good, very positive, and I'm just thinking of to concentrate on my best shot and execute every shot as best I can and just see what happens.
And now, have you seen the full Hunger Games movie yet, or just the trailers?
Just the trailers. I'm very busy.
I'm sure you are. But I assume you will go see it. It's opening this weekend?
Oh, I'll be there.
You'll be there. All right. Katuna Lorig, she trained Jennifer Lawrence in the Hunger Games. She's hopefully headed to the Olympics herself. She's training for the trials right now. We appreciate her being with us to tell us a little bit about how she made Katniss Everdeen come to life on the big screen. Thanks so much, Katuna. Now, in the Hunger Games movie, wasting food is not something you want to do, but in reality, a lot of us are missing culinary opportunities with all those nightly leftovers. Wow, would you look at that? But we're here to the rescue with some tips on what you can do with all of those odds and ends to make it taste good. It's going to be tough for these folks. Take a listen.
Rising food prices have everyone feeling guilty about the food they throw away. So home cooks are looking for ways to turn their leftovers into crowd-pleasing meals. Tamar Adler, author of An Everlasting Meal, Cooking with Economy and Grace, showed us how to make the most out of every ingredient in your kitchen.
We are going to combine all of these random olives that we found in our home kitchens and make a delicious topping for toast. We just cut them all together very roughly. These are anchovies that a lot of us have.
Those have been in my refrigerator for a good long time.
And so for this amount of olives, you probably do 2 of those. And then these capers are also from your refrigerator.
Yes.
Same thing. You just cut them all together.
But what are the ratios we should be thinking about? Capers, anchovies, olives?
For something that's mostly an olive paste like this, you want probably twice as many olives as the other ingredients if you have pretty full jars. But if you don't, whatever you have is fine. So now I'm just going to chop some garlic. And for this amount, you probably want 1 clove of garlic. I usually pound garlic in a mortar and pestle because it makes the garlic into a paste. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, you can do this all on a cutting board. You just want to use a little bit more salt because it helps the garlic break down in that situation also. And then we chop up some parsley.
So we're adding olive oil.
We're adding a lot of olive oil.
A lot of olive oil.
And the last thing I add is a tiny bit of lemon. And we just mix this up.
So these are some things that often end up in the trash in my kitchen. You know, the stem of kale, this big woody stem, the stem of broccoli, or that core of cauliflower. What can we do with those?
I like to turn all of these into a pesto, another topping for toast. So what I did is chop these all up small, put them in a pot with some garlic and olive oil, and then when
a little bit of water if they need a little bit more cooking liquid.
Exactly. If they start to get brown, then I add a little bit of water. And then I just stick them in a food processor. And you can also just do this you can do it all by hand. Just chop it up more finely. The texture doesn't matter.
Squish it up if it's soft.
Squish it with a masher. And then I also added a little bit of Parmesan, which I grated into here, some more raw garlic, and that's it. Multi-purpose core and stem pesto. So there they are.
Great. One of the things that you talk about a lot is how an egg can make almost anything a meal, a well-cooked egg, and preferably a good egg.
This is a really great soup because it's really just broth and an egg and more stale bread. So what we're going to do is cook a little bit of chopped garlic into our broth, and that's the only ingredient that we're using. It just needs to cook for about 5 minutes, and it's just going to season. I'm going to add a little bit of sherry vinegar.
Okay.
But if you don't have sherry vinegar and you only have white vinegar, it'll still be good. So I always crack eggs into another container before I poach them.
Why is that?
If the yolk and the white break, it's much easier to figure out what to do if you've broken it into a separate container, because if that does break, you can just scramble it later or the next day. All you do is you get pretty close to the surface and you drop your egg into...
Gently drop the
egg into the broth, and it will take about 3 minutes. So while this is cooking, which just takes a few minutes, we'll make the rest of the soup. One of the things that makes people nervous about poached eggs is that they're worried about overcooking the yolk, but they don't realize that you can just press on it to see when it's done enough. Perfect. So you take this, you put it on top of your
stale bread.
You just pour great Parmesan cheese, another essential in your leftovers kitchen. A bit of olive oil. Again, right on the egg. And then parsley.
Beautiful.
Tamar also suggests sautéing leftover rice with olive oil and a little water, and then topping with leftover garlicky greens, scallions, and of course, an egg, poached or fried.
Now, we have had a few celebrity chefs on this show, but do you think they could do anything with these leftovers I found in the refrigerator at the Wall Street Journal? I am not so sure, but in the meantime, let's check in with Gail Monahan. She's got our Cooking Confidential segment. She's going to find out what it takes to become a really good chef. Ooh.
I read an article once that said that you can have like between, let's say, 5 billion taste buds on your tongue and 20. basically you have to love food, I think. I think you have to love what you're doing. You really have to be a fairly creative person. I think a pastry chef maybe more has to be a little bit artistic and patient and fastidious. The pastry chef in a restaurant gets there early in the morning and is there before the chefs get there usually, and is out of there when all the hubbub starts in the kitchen or soon after, you know, whereas if you're a chef, you're in there with the fire and the stove and the oven and all the noise and the chaos. So they're very different personality types. So I guess the opposite would be that to be a good cook versus the pastry chef, you would, you know, like chaos and be able to deal with all that noise and the confusion, and you know, you can move quickly and you're flexible. So very different. I think the most important thing you need to know as a cook really is to use enough salt. I had a cooking teacher once who told me that this is too much salt and this is enough salt. So, you know, salt is a real flavor enhancer and it really does bring out the flavor of food. And I know many dinner parties I've been to where the food is okay, but it's not that great. The only thing that's wrong with it is that it needs salt. Real chefs taste the food as they're going along making the recipe. And so many people are very religious in, you know, at following a recipe, and they do it fastidiously, and they have not tasted it during it, they don't taste it after it, they just make the recipe and they put it on the table. And if they're lucky, that's gonna work. But there's almost no question that it would be better if they tasted it along the way, and especially when it's done.
Now, few of us will admit it, but when we are off duty, we often like to watch trash TV. And you know what? Our own Lee Hawkins, he sat down with the king, Maury Povich, to talk about the business and what makes guests want to come on his show in the first place. Hey, Mike.
Bring up the daddy DNA results.
There's a lot of fighting going on between our,
Maury Povich. He's been in the broadcasting business for 50 years, and he's grown his brand immensely in that time frame to see his show become one of the highest rated shows in the history of syndicated television. And we're with him today on the studio set.
Nice to see you.
How are you?
Fine.
One of the things about your show is it's almost a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yes.
Played out with everyday people.
Yeah.
In 5-minute segments or 7-minute segments.
Yeah.
Is that what the appeal is?
Well, I think so. I think the appeal are the classic Shakespearean themes. I mean, you have love and lust and betrayal and mistrust and drama, all of these classic themes that go on, and we play them out in 12 minutes, and with a couple of the topics like the lie detector tests and the DNA results, you have an answer. So the audience knows, and the guests know. You know, you have this big question mark. You know, is he the father or is he cheating on me? And by the end of the segment, we're going to know.
And you get a firsthand look at some of these real problems that our country faces. Absentee fathers.
Yes.
Teenage pregnancy.
Yes.
What's the solution for
Well,
this?
I think, believe it or not, I think we've had an effect on DNA. And I would say we've had an effect on teenagers, particularly teenage girls who want to go out and get pregnant and run the streets because they think that if they have a baby, that's going to be unconditional love. And I think we've turned that around to basically say, you know, you are going to have so much harder a life if you go that route, and that you're not prepared to be a mother at that age. And with the DNA, we're bringing some of the fathers into these children's lives who would not be there. A, because of their doubt, and B, because, you know, they shirk their responsibility.
One thing I always wonder about is if you're going to take a DNA test, why do it in front of the world?
Well,
on the Maury Povich?
I think, first of all, both sides feel comfortable with me because they think they're getting a fair shake. And they also believe that this test we're going to take is a test that's been sanctioned by a company that has a great reputation in the DNA world. It's not a home DNA test where you might be taking it privately and all of a sudden you use the wrong people, you know, you use a substitute somewhere along the line.
So it's the authenticity factor.
I think the authenticity factor. Secondly, it costs a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money. And some of these families don't have that kind of money.
One final question. Where are things headed
You know,
will there be
that is-
another
that is-
genre? Will there be
well,
another
you know, it's-
genre that comes in
I
to
mean-
overtake reality TV?
I don't know about the genre. The question is, where is it going in terms of the platform? In other words, we are very old traditional business here, talk shows on over-the-air television. I mean, it's an old platform. It's very difficult to get an audience when everybody is running around with phones and everybody's on digital. And so therefore, I think there are going to be talk shows. They are always going to be talk shows. But the question is, the format is going to be not on TV.
Well, you're sitting here right now talking to me on YouTube.
That's right. This is YouTube television, right? Exactly.
It's the Wall Street Journal's YouTube channel.
Right.
Right.
I mean, and so my son, my 16-year-old son, when he comes home on Friday afternoons with his buddies, they run into their bedroom. What do you think they're going to tune into? YouTube.
Hopefully this.
YouTube. They're turning into YouTube to see, because word of mouth or texting, you got to see this video, you got to see that video. You know, they're even watching videos of my show on YouTube.
Okay.
I mean, we have a show, a phobia show, and we have a woman who is scared of pickles. There have been 3 million hits of the pickle lady.
Now, a bunch of our Wall Street Journal reporters, they were lucky enough to get a special sneak preview of the Hunger Games movie coming out this weekend. Maybe that's why they're not here. I guess they tried to go back for a second screening. I don't know, but you know what? I did catch up with them earlier to find out what worked, what didn't, what they liked, what they didn't like, and what we can expect from this spring's potential blockbuster. Alexander Cheney, John Jurgensen, you got to do the thing that so many people across America are waiting to do. You saw an early preview of the Hunger Games movie. Now, the first thing I have to ask is, was it true to the book?
Very much so. I think it really followed the progression, all the characters. You got a little taste of everyone. They did add a kind of larger exploration of the game center. You really got a lot of visuals from there, a lot of different elements of how the games actually worked from the control side of things.
Interesting, which you do not so much in the book. We're very much always in the arena in the book. And speaking of being in the arena, the violence, John, I mean, this is the big question. This movie is rated PG-13.
Correct.
Some people have said it just should have been R based on the concept of children killing other children alone. What's your take?
Well, it's interesting when you're reading the book and you're picturing it in your mind. Yes, it's a challenging book for that reason, but it's all in your mind. And to make the jump to the screen, you're actually seeing these things play out visually in front of you is really dramatic. That sort of that abrupt feeling of it. You know, we saw it in a theater full of people, and there are certain scenes, without giving too much away, where you really kind of felt the people gasp for breath in the theater. I heard some sobs as well, and it made me think, when the certain young kids died in the film, how could they really pull this off?
So there could be some controversy over this rating, perhaps, it seems. I wonder, too, do you think we've become desensitized at all a little bit culturally? Because in Harry Potter, while there weren't really like children so much going after other children, you did see some fighting and children got hurt in that movie. Do you think that's taken us to a point where we can take the Hunger Games a little bit more?
I don't know if you can necessarily say that, because Harry Potter was this fantastical world where you were fighting with, the equivalent of lightsabers. You were fighting with
wands.
It was magic.
Right.
It was magic, and this is very much true life. You have bows, you have swords, you
Blood.
have, very blunt force objects that you can find in real life society. So I think they're very different because they're very different genres. But I think the adults may be desensitized, but I personally don't have any kids, but I don't know if I would take my 11 or 12-year-old to see this.
The good thing here, I think a lot of adults have read the book, so they kind of know what they're getting into with this film too. Yeah. So and you should know that pretty much everything that happens in the books is happening on the screen. So if you can think of the most violent parts of the book, they get around a lot of it with editing and with the way that the film is shot in a very kind of fast cut, shaky style. So you don't necessarily always see the things that are happening, but there's a lot of blood spilled for sure.
As a guy, one of the big questions about this movie is, will guys go to see the movie in droves the way teen girls or women did to see the Twilight series? And this has been the big if on whether this will be bigger than Twilight. What's your man take on this?
My manly take is that I think the key is how many of these guys have read the books, because if you read the book, you're invested in the characters and the action and maybe the violence, if that's part of your, what you're looking for. And so they're going to see how it's going to play out on the screen. If they've never heard of this thing before and have maybe given it a pass because of all the hype, I think it might be tough to get people into it. I mean, for me, watching it, some of the love scenes did sort of slow things down, and not because I'm against sort of romance films, but just the way that they had to pack a lot into this short film, and so you need things to move along really quickly.
That's a very interesting point. I'm wondering if you thought the same thing, because in the book, the main character, Katniss, she's very torn about the idea of love itself. It's not so much that she's just torn between two guys. She's just sort of torn about being interested in the idea of love. Do you find they stay true to that, or did you find that maybe they pushed the love scene just a little bit too much and it dragged it down like he thought?
I do think that they pushed it a little much. I think in the books, one of the things that you have is you very much have a teen going through, okay, this guy, Gale, is my friend, and we've always been together, and we have this companionship, which you don't really see. I mean, it's in the first little bit of the film, but then she goes to the games, and Gale, every once in a while you see him kind of brooding.
Right.
But that's it. There's no more of that.
And there's no interior monologue. Like
there's no
in the
interior monologue, and there's no... You don't really get the sense of that connection because it's not narrated by her.
Right.
You do get a lot of the Peeta and the Katniss, and I think it will work for the teenage girl,
right?
Because you're seeing this kind of sweet yet very serious, because this is a strategy going on through the film, but it wasn't the swoon. This is a part of me. I want to see this.
And very quickly, because this love story, it would have to continue to hear what happens in the end. You've got to read the other two books in the series, and then they're going to have to make 2 more films quickly. Do you think it'll make it? This will be good enough that they'll make the other 2 films?
I mean, you have to assume that the next part is definitely afoot. They haven't announced it yet, but I can imagine a huge opening weekend, which is pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point, followed pretty quickly by a formal announcement of a next film in the franchise. Right. Whether there will be the same team and the same director, that'll be an interesting question to see.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. All right, John Jurgensen, Alexander Cheney, you guys got the preview of The Hunger Games. Thanks for giving us your analysis. Not a review, but analysis. That's it for today's WSJ Off Duty. Make sure to come back tomorrow when I'll be taking you through Archery 101 for beginners. You never know, there are 2 more books in the Hunger Games trilogy, and Jennifer Lawrence, she might need a backup. Until then, click above to subscribe. Join me on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Wendy Bounds. I'll see you tomorrow.